All right, welcome in. The floor is yours. An extension of 5 on the floor here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel and the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks to our sponsors, as always, Biscayne Bay Brewing. Make sure you ask for the only locally brewed beer that you can find down here, and it's really good. Tropical Bay IPA, Marlins Lager, and all the rest. The official beer of the Miami Marlins. Also, they got a stand up at the arena. I was at the arena today. Did not see the stand. Could have used the beer. But check out Biscayne Bay Brewing, whether you're at Publix, Whole Foods, any of those other locations. Definitely ask for it by name. Also, many of the local restaurants here in town. Also, our friend Mark Brown, markbrownpa.com. This is the guy you go to if you need your title done. I'm going to be doing that with him here very shortly. He just took care of a different property for me. Now he's going to take care of one again because he did such a good job. So reach out to markbrownpa.com. Mention 5 Reasons. Mention 5 Reasons. That's the number 5 Reasons. And you'll get $295 for your closing. And there's the phone number, 954-566-5678, 954-566-5678. He'll also handle your estate planning, which is important, especially if you have a young family. Make sure that they're taken care of. Again, markbrownpa.com, also a big Miami sports fan. All right, let's get to tonight's floor plan here on Floor is Yours. Again, I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at 5 Reasons Sports. Wearing the Udonis Haslam shirt. Appreciate him being out there at Surfside yesterday. And obviously every day is a good day to honor UD. We've got Greg Sylvander above me wearing the new fresh 5 Reasons hat, which you can find on our website. They fit better than the other ones. I've got a ton of them here. I'm going to get them out to more of our crew. But if you want one, you can get them on 5reasonsports.com. Alex Toledo next to him. And then below him, Marco Romo. He's still trying to get his old Twitter account back. So in the meantime, please follow him. All right, let's get to it. Yesterday, we talked about Colin Sexton on 5 on the floor. We also, and this potential trade for Kevin, along with Kevin Love, who now there's more reports. Sam Amico, who covers the Cavs, reported today that there are several teams interested in Kevin Love. The Heat got thrown in the mix. The Heat got thrown into every mix. We know that. Some of that is our doing.
It's like a meme now.
It is, but it's because we're doing more reporting than any of the reporters from the other teams. That's what's happening here. But also, Kevin Love got thrown in there. Talked about possibility of Tyler Hero going out along with some of these contracts. We also talked about the brain drain in the Heat organization. There are a lot of Heat fans sort of freaked out because Shane Battier left and Dwayne Wade left and Chris Quinn's getting interviewed and on and on and on. And we tried to put that into some perspective. Today, we're going to go total fantasy talk here, okay? So this is not one to necessarily aggregate, okay? We are not reporting that the Heat are going to get Kawhi Leonard, all right?
But you're not, but I don't know. I may have something.
You may. I don't.
I'm totally joking.
I don't, okay? But Stephen A. Smith has said it, right? He said, more likely Miami than L.A., Kawhi did his disappearing act, as he tends to do when he has injuries. He said that a couple of weeks ago. Then, additionally, there was another report today. Was it a fairly reliable reporter, actually, Kevin O'Connor, who reported the Heat in the mix there. He's fairly reliable as these things go. So let's get right to it, Greg. I mean, obviously, anybody would want Kawhi Leonard, even with the baggage. Even with that baggage he left with San Antonio with, he won a championship with Toronto. The Raptors would love to have him back. But is there really any path to this at all?
Okay, so the easiest path is that if the Heat were to decline every single option, rescind their qualifying offers on Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson, literally just go down to the bare bones, they can get, I don't know, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood north of $30 million to offer a player like Kawhi Leonard, but then literally it's all minimums after that. I think the Clippers would be way more apt to look to sign and trade opportunities because they need to get something back. They mortgaged everything to bring him there. When I poked around on this today, I was kind of told that it's not realistic that Kawhi Leonard is really looking elsewhere. He's his camp is hard enough to communicate with. So it's not something you can go into free agency and really have as a primary plan. Particularly when has the option that can get him $50 million more dollars. So, but there is a path. I mean, you would either be sign and trade, because I think he would want to, the theory is Lowry and Kawhi reunite in Miami with Jimmy. Maybe even DeMar DeRozan joins them if we're talking about a super plan A.
Oh my God!
But that's like unrealistic, honestly.
Just add Prime MJ while you're at it, Alex. I mean, on this note, I've always felt the more realistic option with the Clippers is Paul George.
Agreed.
Who the Heat have had legitimate interest in the past, and I think redeemed himself to a large degree in terms of the way that he performed in the playoffs. But the Kawhi thing, you do give up everything if you have to. You just don't have enough to give up, right? This is even right.
I mean, look, the DeRozan thing that Leif just threw in there was very Friday news dumb. We're just gonna kind of throw this, there in the middle when we haven't really been talking about DeRozan at all. So I'm interested to hear a little bit more about that at some other point in this show. But the Kawhi thing, of course, you do whatever you can to try to make that happen. It just doesn't seem realistic. Look, the Stephen A thing you said, kind of piques my interest a little bit because he's been right about stuff in the past. And he said Miami more likely than LA?
Yes. More likely than going to the Lakers.
Yo, everyone hates on Stephen A. Smith. And I'm gonna let Alex keep going. I'm gonna let you go first, but don't forget, that dude called the big three and people screamed the worst stuff at him, and he had it before anybody else. If I remember.
Yeah, he's not typically anti-Miami either. I will say that. Not generally.
Anyway, Alex, back to you.
Alex, continue before we go to Marco.
You're right though. Legit, logically, you would think that Kawhi's going to stay there. He left a literal championship team to go to the Clippers, and now it's not like they collapsed in the first couple rounds again. They got to the conference finals. Paul George showed, that he's still a baller despite what everybody said, and he had an ugly finish, which I, by the way, called on Full Court Press. No, but seriously, I think he's good enough. I think he sees the team as good enough. They prove to him, and I'm sure they can make some type of moves out there to make him a little bit happier. I'm not really looking at him as somebody that's going to be out there on the market, and that's why, I agree with you. Logically, Paul George should be the guy if they really do want to make a trade for another big piece. That's really what they have, because it's not like they got picks. They don't got any blue chip guys there. So yeah, and by the way, I would absolutely do that. Despite all the jokes, Paul George would be a monster if you were to throw him here along with Jimmy and Bam and whoever else they acquire.
Let me throw this at you, Marco, because this has been something we've discussed. The idea of and you should check out Marco's first 2 out of 3 pieces. He's going to put a third one up about the
really
free agent targets. So make sure you go through that. That's on 5reasonsports.com, which of course is free. We do not have a paywall. And anyway, by the way, if you guys want to help keep things free, make sure to contribute to our super chat to help Ethan's internet. No, not just my internet, but also Marco's. Thank you for the support. We will definitely read your comment if you do that. But Marco, the Heat have gotten caught in recent years. Greg and I talked about this a little bit on the pod, waiting for the Orca and letting a bunch of, sharks get away. And essentially, they Durant in 16. Gordon Hayward was not much of that type of player, but that was a really weak free agent market, and they kind of waited on Hayward. They didn't get him. Obviously, Jay Crowder is now going to the finals. They could have kept Jay Crowder, but they were sort of keeping the cap space open for Giannis, which is why they didn't extend the years. And now we've got guys like Dame and Kawhi and some of these names who are franchise-changing players. Typically, they're worth the wait, but in the position that the Heat are in, do you want to pass on Kyle Lowry or even a Spencer Dinwiddie or a Colin Sexton to sort of, hope that you can get in the room with Kawhi or Dame?
I think I don't know. Somebody made a good point about this. It's more about how many good players you have now. When you look at the teams who are still playing, it's about building just a team of a bunch of just good all-around guys who are good at offense and defense, which is not what Miami has. And you look at the remaining teams; they have just 10 deep guys who play defense or offense, or at least are elite at one thing or elite at another thing. Miami had 2 guys who were good on offense and defense, and I guess 3 if you want to count Duncan as an elite offensive guy. So I think it's more about, instead of getting all these whales, but you want to at least gauge the interest of the players. That's a thing that free agency is a part of. You want to gauge the interest first, You want to see if there's something there. If there's not, you got to move away from it as quickly as possible. Find somebody who's going to fill in the void immediately instead of somebody who might fill that void later on down the road. You have to get your answers quickly, which is a big part of free agency. You got to really gauge the inches pretty fast. And I think they'll probably learn from that from the past couple of seasons where you got Jimmy Butler's gauge pretty quickly, and you were okay. We're going to do this. We're going to get him. But then last year you didn't move off fast enough. Yeah.
Well, and that gets to the point of what Bam said today. When he was asked about recruiting, and in the Olympics, and he said, he said they'll ask.
They may ask me.
They may ask me, so that he doesn't actually have to do the recruiting. But he is going to be there with Lillard and with Beal, and so you would think he'd get a sense of it.
And Tatum.
At a certain point. And Tatum, although he's not really available right now. But yes. Yeah,
Lillard is the one that he's going to be talking to.
You would think so. But let's get through it. Your point's a good one, Marco, about the teams left in the playoffs, because the Clippers were just basically saved for a long period of time by a point guard they re-signed to the minimum in Reggie Jackson, who had to be convinced to play. And then he averaged.
And now he's going to get paid.
He's going to pay. He averaged 18 on nearly 48% shooting in the Western Conference Finals. I mean, to the point where you're like, would you pay him more or Dennis Schroeder more? Because Dennis Schroeder's asking for $100 million. Honestly, I might rather have Reggie Jackson at this point.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's so I think your point is a good one, that you need more good players, and I think what we found this year is the Heat just didn't have enough good players. I think, no offense to Trevor Ariza, okay, who I think did a nice job for the Heat when he came in. In 10 years, long after Trevor Ariza has played for all 30 teams and is retired, we're not even going to remember that Trevor Ariza played for the Heat, right? And he was starting at power forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like LaFonso Ellis or Kendall Gill or something.
Doesn't that just depend on if they bring him back or not?
Oh, perhaps. But I think the general point is like
be the starting four next season. And what if they go on a run there? Like,
okay, funny. All right. You're being very technical. I'm with you, Alex, on that. But I will. But no, I get it. But
they should bring him back, by the way. If
they should. But the point is, the Heat were in a position where they had so few good players that they had to essentially plug two holes with guys who'd been out of basketball for a year in Dedmon and Ariza, which just tells you the rest of the roster, as much as I touted it, was trash, okay? Because
they can't do it again.
Right? Is that fair, guys? Alex, Marco? I mean,
I think we underestimated throughout the season their lack of extra playmaking. I mean, I think maybe it wasn't the priority. I think for a lot of the beginning half of the season, I remember the talk was the four, right? It was always the four. Not that we weren't doing that too, because we were absolutely doing that. And I think, once we got the four, and I know they traded for a guard to try to kind of address this too, but once they got the four and there was no extra playmaking or shot creation, and Goran keeps struggling, and it's really just kind of Jimmy taking that load, it gets ugly, because it's like you need other guys, like Marco's talking about. This is right back to that theme. Mm-hmm. You need more good players, more guys who can generate offense together. That's why you see teams in general now have two guys in their starting lineup that they can trust with playmaking and scoring. And I think that's why Lowry is a hand in glove fit for all of that stuff that we talk about. Yeah, and I think he would make Ariza better, by the way.
Yes, I think he'd make a lot of guys better. The guy that Lowry would make better the most is Bam. And I think that we should talk about Bam, because I was down at the arena today. They invited a few media to kids camp. Tony Fiorentino hosted. Bam spoke to the campers. Actually, the campers asked questions that were every bit as good as the media did afterwards. They put him on the spot a little bit, and then we asked some afterwards.
No stakes.
They were good. Well, I'll say this. Yeah, it's true. That's true. They can't be. They're not going to shut.
Got media relations on them.
They're not going to shut the kids out. I mean, I asked Bam about his haircut, so I mean that's I was asking the hard hitting questions. He says Fro Bam may be brought back eventually, but I do think, again, some of the things Bam said today we should go over, because Bam said that he's going to be a 3-point shooter soon. I think we've heard, Greg, that this is a priority, not just for Bam, but for the organization, and not just the corners, everywhere, that they want him to work on his 3-point shot.
Yeah, I think that more and more they're realizing that he may have just as much the ability to cultivate a viable 3-point shot as whatever big that they're trying to pair next to him. So maybe he needs to become the guy who can have that type of threat. At least maybe it's on small attempts, 3 attempts or something small, as when you talk about his full career. But I've heard that, in addition to the corners, that they're really just starting to get reps in there. And to me, that's super encouraging. That and any ball handling that they're doing with Bam, so that he can start taking guys off the dribble. Like, let's go. I love it.
Well, and to get back to the Olympics thing, he said he wanted to destroy Spo's team. I want to get into Spo's team here in a second. But also I asked him, I said, there aren't many bigs on this team. So what do you expect your role to be? He says, we'll see it when I get there. But the reality, Marco, is he's going to have a big role on this Olympic team. You've got Booker and Lillard and Beal. And the backcourt is crowded with a lot of guys. The front court is not. Kevin Love basically took, and also we're going to get to see Bam and Kevin Love play a little together, possibly, which I do think is going to be helpful here to see if there's any kind of a fit. But I do think, Bam getting 20 plus minutes a game in the Olympics and being counted on, at least until they probably go to Durant at the 5, maybe Draymond at the 5 late in games. That's a good thing, isn't it?
I think, yeah, for sure it is. Especially with a guy like Dame who knows how to get the ball to his big man. Because he plays with Yusuf Nurkic. They run a lot of similar dribble handoff type of stuff that Miami actually runs. To the point about the 3-point thing, actually, I wanted to make was, I think the trailing 3 is more important than the corner 3 for a guy like Bam, because he's such a vertical threat that when you have the threat of the jump shot, like that comes way more than the corner 3 comes. And then you have also the rim running threat. Yeah, he becomes Jokic and Ayton combined pretty much, and that's like a threat you want on your team. I hope we see that more. I love the tease he gave us during that, and I really hope he plays a lot with the guards, because he doesn't have a guard on the team currently that really gets him the ball all that much. You saw Victor Oladipo actually do that the most in his few games here. He was actually looking for him. Nobody else really looked for him like he did, besides, I guess, Jimmy. But Jimmy was really more who he had to do that because he saw that nobody else was doing it. I'm really excited for that. And I think the Olympics are always great. Guys always come out better after them. You saw Dwayne Wade have his MVP year after that. Everybody loved that. LeBron. Yeah, exactly. Luka Doncic is actually having a pretty good qualifying tournament right now, so he might come back next year even better. It's always good to get the reps in with great players, because these are the guys you're going to see throughout the year. It's also a great time to cultivate a personality outside of Miami, and maybe you open more eyes up. I'm really happy to see that, and I hope Bam I think he can add a little more to his game. The international game is a lot different. The court's a lot smaller. He's probably the most athletic guy that's going to be on playing the 5 throughout this whole tournament. Looking at the rest of the rosters, I think he can learn a lot from the FIBA type of tournament, the FIBA type of basketball instead of like the usual NBA. And I think he can probably implement a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I think that, you mentioned the trailing threes. The last Heat big to make trailing threes is Chris Bosh. That became a big part of their arsenal.
Josh McRoberts.
In the 3 games he played.
Kelly
Kelly made some, but not Kelly. Yeah,
Kelly operated
a lot from the wings. Yeah, he operated a lot from the wings.
You're right.
But Alex, to get into this too, I also think there's a benefit, in all seriousness, to Spoelstra coaching this select team, because we're going to look back in 4 or 5 years when some of these guys become free agents, or maybe they don't get extensions, as we've seen happen with some guys. The Collinses and they're not on this team, but the Collinses and Alonzo Balls, etc. Some of these players, and there's some players on that select team, I will admit, there are 3 guys I've not heard of. It's an interesting team. I don't think Tyler is going to start, by the way. Just looking at it, he looks to me like a 6th man on that team. I think Anthony Edwards is going to start for sure. There are a couple others who I think are givens. But I do think, Alex, that Spoelstra getting a look at some of those guys is beneficial. And I've also said I think Spoelstra getting a look at how Pop uses Bam is beneficial.
It's absolutely beneficial, and this is just the start of. And we know that Spo is like respected and accredited throughout the league, and especially like amongst his peers, amongst the front offices in the league, and players as well. So like this is a start of him ascending to that, that level that the best coaches in the league get to, where they have influence among Team USA. And if he can really, set himself up to be a part of this going forward, I think it's great recruiting wise for the Heat, because you're just opening yourself up to a lot more relationships, right? And that's where stuff gets started. And it's not that anything gets guaranteed because Spo's around these guys, but it's great. And even though it's, he's coaching a lot of young guys who are unproven and not all stars by any means, it's a lot of talented young guys, right? Like all these rookies who are good already, like Halliburton, and you've got Anthony Edwards, you've got Sadiq Bey, you've got a guys who've been a couple, Halliburton as well. You've got guys who've been a couple of years in the league, Miles Bridges, Darius Garland, like
Patrick Williams. I think he's going to play really well.
It's good. It's good for Spo. I'm sure he's going to have fun with it, trying to, see if he can make that team beat Team USA. That would be a pretty fun storyline, and I think Spo could make it happen somehow. But I just think it's good that he's setting himself up in that path, and somebody else isn't getting that love and recognition like Tom Thibodeau or something.
You think they're going to hand it off to him? You think Spo is the heir apparent to Pop?
He's wanted to be in that mix, I know, and he's never
a great candidate.
He's never turned down the opportunities when he's been granted them, and there really is not a natural successor, because I think one of the guys that was always mentioned was Brad Stevens, right? And he's not even coaching anymore. So I you would think if you just look at it, that there would be an opportunity for him. I mean, I don't think it's going to be someone like Doc, who's sort of advanced at this point and
you want them to win the gold medal, not the bronze.
Well, right, that's the thing.
There's people that want to fire Spo. And he's he'll end up being the heir apparent to the Team USA.
Well, that has always been the great sort of dichotomy here. And sort of, it's interesting with Heat fans on Spo. Heat fans get very frustrated with Spo, mostly for in-game adjustment, rotation type stuff, right? But then, like, when anybody comes after Spo, they defend Spo. Whenever I throw a poll up, it's true. Right, it's 95% like, we want Spo, but then they go right back to criticizing him again, and yet the perception again nationally is that he does a really good job. So it's a little bit of all of it. I think it's funny. I'm reminded. It's funny that James Jones is in the finals now, because I think he's done a tremendous job. Although he inherited a lot of that. He basically put the pieces together in the right way. He brought in Chris Paul, etc. But James Jones used to be incredibly frustrated with Spo for not communicating with veterans, all that kind of stuff. I would hear that sort of stuff all the time. So, I mean, it's not like Spo is considered to be perfect in any way, but I think he's better than a lot of Heat fans think he is at times when they get frustrated by it. All right, let's go around the room here, but rapid fire here again. Check out our sponsors, markbrownpa.com, estate planning. Also, if you need your title done, he's got a law office right there in-house. He's right there in North Lauderdale. Also, Biscayne Bay Brewing. Of course, always check out prizepicks.com. Use the code 5. They got an incredible promotion right now. So check out, again, the code 5. But let's just go to it. Give me, and the therapistpreferred.com. Don't forget that, too. Got to get the new CBD. 25% off if you use the code 5 reasons. But let's, 30 seconds or less, I'm clocking all of you. Give me one sort of under the radar free agent or trade target that we haven't been talking about a lot, who might make some sense here. You think that he could go after? Marco first.
Nick Batum, get him for a pretty good deal, I think. He fits perfectly into the 4. Maybe you can play him at the 3 or 4 stretches, depending on the lineup. He was pretty underrated, pretty underused the last parts of the playoffs. So I think Nick Batum.
Unrestricted free agent, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Greg.
I think that they could look at Marcus Morris, a player that they were interested in free agency last year, and that they could circle back to him if they're looking for veterans that they think they can plug and really depend on. So that is an underrated trade candidate.
Markieff Morris, too, is somebody that we've talked about as well.
Correct. That would be free agency.
Free agency and at lower cost. Alex.
That Marcus thing is a little bit worrisome. I like the idea, but damn, he's kind of expensive for the next 3 years. This one was, just off the top of my head, but somebody brought it up today in this Big Heat Twitter chat, and I've kind of thought about it again. Josh Richardson, can they use one of these guys that's a free agent to acquire him, like in a sign and trade type scenario? Let's say Dallas wants to sign Victor, which it's totally the type of team to go after Victor Oladipo. A team is looking to get Luka, another shot creator. Maybe other things don't work out, other guys they want to get, and they're like, let's try Victor out for a year, pay him big money, sign and trade. You get back Josh Richardson, or maybe another guy from that team, Tim Hardaway Jr., whichever one, they're more willing to send out, and if the Heat are willing to pay Tim. I just think like something like that makes a lot of sense for a way to get your backcourt a little bit more size and get something back there.
One name we haven't talked about in a while, and I don't have any smoke on this, but it's just, I don't know. It feels like the type of name we talked about and got away from. I feel like Chicago is going to shake things up this offseason a little bit in an effort to keep Levine there. I don't think you can get Levine. I think you can get Lauri Markkanen. And I do think that there may be a benefit to going after Lauri Markkanen to give yourself a stretch player with some upside to pair with Bam. So just name we talked about a lot a few months ago, and then we sort of stopped talking about him. But he feels like a kind of guy.
They checked in at the deadline.
That they could make a run at. And again, if they're building,
how much do you pay him though?
That's a tough call. But I mean, he showed a lot of promise as a rookie. I feel like he's the type of guy if he got to a different situation. They like Gallinari, you know that. Lauri Markkanen has that kind of feel.
No, hold on.
A little bit.
Let's not disrespect Gallinari like that. That guy can do stuff with the ball in his hand.
I understand, but Lauri, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Again, no information on this. Just throwing out in there. Oh, stop it. All right, Alex Toledo, Marco Romo, Greg Sylvander, and Udonis Haslem. Have a good night.